Welcome to Settling's Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs and I'm here with my co-host Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life. Whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself, we're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or want to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheers-to-not-settling@gmail.com. Finally, to conclude the plug, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Coffee, where we are aiming to buy some new audio equipment. That being said, look at my new fantastic laptop.
Right.
You know,
we might still need some lighting equipment, but it's much better.
Yeah, thank you. I think
we probably could both use lighting and audio, but
yes. But I'm particularly happy with this setup today. So last week we interviewed Tammy. And Tammy obviously spoke a lot to us about children and emotions and her love of teaching. So it kind of spurred on this episode, which will be all about parenting and families. And there's three things that we want to cover. So we'll loop back to these at the end and hopefully we cover them all for you. The first is we want people to not settle for society's expectations that you should have children by a certain age or that you even have to have children at all. That people shouldn't settle for societal expectations of what a mother or a father should look like, and that we shouldn't settle for what society says a family should look like. So hopefully we cover those three things. I guess to kind of open from my point, and I put this a lot on the Settling's Not an Option group, I've learned a lot from my 4-year-old, and they've been lessons that could be quite easily missed, I think, in the kind of hustle bustle of everyday life. So three things I guess I learned from Rose was the first thing is treat every day like it's your birthday. So I think a lot of people think, what do you mean? But like she loves to make birthday cards for me. And she's like, it's your birthday today, Dad. I'm like,
no matter which day it is, like you just do it out of the blue.
Every single day is
That's awesome.
birthday day. And, you know, I'd be like, oh, another birthday? And she'd make me little presents and stuff like that, which is obviously very
That's so cute.
But then when I sat back, I thought, well, hold on a minute. Like, why do we, like, obviously, you know, I had my birthday recently and, like, I wanted to be treated like, you know, royalty. But then I thought, like...
Here we go again. Here's that ego.
Back to the ego thread.
Back to the ego.
But my girlfriend's the same. When she has her birthday, we call it the Festival of Nat, because she'll, like, have a birthday that goes for, like, a week.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, so it made me think, like, on our birthday, we usually will have a big celebration, and if you don't, that's totally fine as well. But it made me think, every day should be your birthday. Every day you should have fun and be excited. It shouldn't just be one day of the year.
Yep.
So that was lesson number one. Lesson number two, and I'll probably forget these as we go, was always have marshmallows. So,
okay.
So we like always go and get hot chocolates.
Sure.
And, you know, she like basically the other day someone was like, do you want some marshmallows? And she's like, I always want marshmallows. And again, very deep philosophical moment. And I was like, in life, you should always have marshmallows, you know? Like,
something, just a little something to add to whatever. Yeah, just to sweeten it up a little bit.
Say yes. Don't hold back because society says, you know, marshmallows have too many calories or something in them. Have the marshmallows. True. And the last one was not so much in something she said, but in something she did, which was every time we go for a walk or any time we're going anywhere, and I think a lot of parents will relate to this, she moves at a glacial pace.
Oh, yeah.
You know, everything is distracted by, look at these flowers. I want to pick these flowers and I want to grab this and that. And in as much as it's like, come on, child, we need to go to this place.
Come on, child.
You know, it's quite beautiful, really. It's like, stop. Yeah. You always have time to slow down and pick some flowers. So I thought straight away, like, here's this 4-year-old teaching me more insightful lessons, I think, than, you know, anything I could learn in a classroom. So have you had any similar things with your kids over the years?
Yes, and actually I didn't even think of it until you named yours off, but the one that instantly came to my mind was, so I have I have one biological daughter and then I have 2 stepchildren and I have 2 Emmas. So my stepdaughter is Big Emma. She's 17 right now. And then I have Spencer. and he is 14, and then little Emma is almost 12. So this was probably, this was when she was 10, because I actually almost wrote a post about it, and then I ended up not writing it. But anyhow, I know she was 10 at the time, and she had taken up jogging with her dad, and he is always pushing her to jog a certain amount or whatever. And I ride my bike with her because I can't jog. So I'll ride my bike next to her while she's jogging. And she was having a really hard time that day. And she was really struggling to finish the run. And she actually got to the point where she was crying. And I told her, I'm like, it's okay. You can, if you need to take a break or something. And she's like, no, Mom, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to do this. I just want to get it done. And I want to do a good job. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I wouldn't have even done that at my age, let alone when I'm 10 years old, to like have the I don't know, the will to do that. So that one always comes to mind. The other two, so Big Emma is just like super kind to everyone. So she teaches me lessons every day in kindness. And she's someone who is almost too nice. Like you almost get annoyed with her because she's too nice, which seems like a horrible thing to say. But it's just true, because she's just overly nice, and you're like, you get annoyed because you know that you're not as good as she is. And she's just such a sweet person. And then Spencer, he teaches me a lot of lessons about super hard work and being dedicated to something, because he plays travel hockey, as we've talked about a little bit, and is very competitive, and he wants to play at least in college. He would like to go professional, obviously, but at least in college. So at any rate, it takes a lot of work, and he does it, and he does it without being told. Like during quarantine, he was out shooting pucks in the front yard or in the driveway for like 2 hours a day. He was working out like twice a day. He was downstairs. We have a weight room. He was downstairs working out in the weight room, and just like, just sticking with it. And it really showed once hockey season started again, how much he had progressed from that. But so that's the three, or I guess the things that I've learned from each one of them.
They're great lessons.
They really are. Yeah. And then I'm just like, man, how did we get such great kids?
Yeah.
I know.
That's it. I mean, I don't know. We've got to pay attention to these lessons, because life is so busy, and it's so easy to miss these, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just to stop, that just reminds me, and I guess I would say this would fall under the category of maybe like, don't settle for not listening to your kids, because so Spencer, he's a pretty quiet kid most of the time, but when he does get talking, like sometimes you can't get him to stop talking. And like today, he got home from school and he was telling me a couple things, and I was trying to work. So I'm like listening to him, and then I'm like, okay. And then he started telling me something else, and I'm like, okay, I need to get back to work. But I didn't. I just stopped. And I'm like, it's important. Even though what he was saying is not important to me, it was important to him to be able to tell me. So I mean, that's just such a simple thing you can do with your kids. You just stop and listen to what they're telling you. And
I agree.
And act like it's important, because whatever they're telling you, it could be the dumbest thing in the world, or to an adult, but to them, it's very important. They wouldn't be telling you,
Yeah.
So it's just that just reminded me of that I just had that happen today, and I just had to stop. Well, kind of like you with the flowers, or the stopping while you're walking, and it's like, okay, that's fine. My work can wait 2 minutes while Spencer finishes telling me his story.
Yeah. And I think you're 100% right. It's that means so much. I even think back to when I was at high school, is my dad would always pick me up and drop me off to school and pick me up.
Okay.
And on the way to school or on the way back, he would always just talk to me about how my day went. And it was like probably about a 15-minute drive home, but it was just 15 minutes where he would just listen to everything I'd say. And it was just a good way of kind of like, I don't know, getting everything off my chest.
Yeah.
And, he would listen like wholeheartedly for the whole 15 minutes. And like still to this day, like, you know, I say to him like how much I appreciate that he did that every day religiously,
Right.
because, you know, it meant a lot. So I think that's the important thing, especially when we pick up our kids from school or they come home from school or whatever it is to just be like, how did your day go? And sit there and actually listen,
Right.
rather than just going, okay. Because even though, like, especially toddlers, it's just nonsensical mumbo jumbo sometimes that I'm like, oh, okay. But there's like, you know, just take the time, because then they realize mum and dad really care, or you know, dad or mum, or
Right. And it's really important to them. Well, and I guess you could extend that too. So, because we talked before the show, you know, that we don't want to alienate people that don't have kids. I mean, we're kind of focusing on kids, obviously, but you could extend that to any family member.
Yeah.
And just because even, you know, you take for granted, even with my husband and I, you know, you do have to sometimes consciously stop and sit and talk and look each other in the eye instead of talking to each other as you're walking past each other in the kitchen or something, you know, because everybody gets so busy. And so you end up, just like shouting at each other from across a house or whatever. And so I think it's good with any family member or a close friend or whatever, just to remind yourself to take that 5 minutes and check in with them.
Yeah.
And check how their day went.
And especially like with these things, like there's a picture of Rose. I didn't actually mention it.
Perfect.
Perfect timing. But, you know, these things are absolute relationship killers, you know, in that you just lose all that ability to communicate. And you've got to sometimes hold each other accountable to that. You know, sometimes you'll both be sitting at opposite ends of the couch on your phone. You have to say, oh, get off your phone.
Right.
Turn the TV off for a little bit, have a chat.
Yes.
And it can feel quite foreign, but I think it's very necessary. We've got to hold each other accountable for it.
Yeah, because it's just, like you said, so easy to just fall into that trap. Or not trap isn't the right word, but it's just such a habit that you don't even realize that you're doing it. All of a sudden. Yeah, exactly.
So some questions for you, I guess, around, I suppose, a really big thing in society, which is, you know, this idea that you have to have a family, or, you know, you have to have children, and that you have to have children by a certain age. So I'm curious, I suppose, because we'd all have different perspectives on it, but as a woman, you know, growing up and things like that, what are your views, I suppose, on having children and, you know, by a certain age?
Sure. So and you don't know this about me yet, so you get to learn something new today.
Cool.
So I struggled with that one a lot, because I guess there's always that pressure. Like, girls always have pressure to get married and have kids. Like, I just remember, like, this is so crazy to me now that I think about it. But like in our high school, maybe even in our middle school, which I don't know if they call them high school and middle school where you are, but in high school, they had bridal magazines in our high school library. What?
That's weird.
Yes, I know. And I remember looking at them, and we did. I mean, I don't think I was the only one looking at them, but it's just so ingrained in you that you should want to get married, and then obviously along with that comes the kids. I guess we're taught that from the day you were born, because what's one of the first gifts you ever get is probably a baby doll as a girl.
Yeah, right.
And so now that I'm thinking about that more, I guess we being women are kind of taught that from the day we're born, that that's what you're supposed to do. And it can get really difficult. And what you don't know yet is, so I didn't want to have children right away when I was like, right away, I mean, in my early 20s, because I was in school, I was starting my career and all that. And I had in my head, for some reason, that 27 was the perfect age to have a child. I don't know. I just set this age on it. So that was the plan. And up to that point in my life, everything else had gone according to plan. So I started planning for that, thinking it was going to go along just fine. Well, it ended up that my ex-husband and I could not conceive naturally. So and in that time, it took us 3 years actually altogether to conceive Emma. She was not
Wow.
conceived naturally. And I had 2 miscarriages in that time.
Whoa.
So
It's a lot.
now one of the miscarriages was super early on, but it still felt like, to me, because we were really trying to get pregnant, and so it was still hard. The second one, I was farther along. We'd already heard the heartbeat and everything, so that one was really hard.
Nice.
And so you do feel, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of emotions that go along with that, but I suppose one of them is that you do feel like you're not able to do what you're expected to do or what your societal role is. I mean, so obviously you should just be able to be a mom when you want to be a mom. And then when it doesn't happen. But I did learn a lot of good lessons along the way in that. And I mean, just getting Emma, once we had Emma, like, she was a perfect baby. Seriously. I mean, I'm not just saying that, but like, she always ate good. She always slept good. She hardly ever cried. I mean, just perfect. So I'm like, okay, well, it was worth the wait. But yeah, it was a long haul to get there. But then, of course, you're like ticked off all the time too. All these people around you who seem to get pregnant in the drop of a hat, and you're like, really?
Yeah. Wow.
So that plays into it too.
Oh, there's so many things. So many things.
Did I leave you speechless?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, we don't talk, society doesn't talk a lot about those things.
Well, that's true too. I think we do a little bit. I think people are a little more open about it, but even that's one of those things you just don't talk about to people. But a lot of people have been through miscarriages.
Well, because so me and my ex-wife, we went through a miscarriage after having Rose.
Oh, and after? That was okay.
Yeah. And like, people, and you can't blame people. I guess it's just how people respond sometimes. But people reacted to that news with, "Oh, at least you already have a child."
Oh gosh, that's like, horrible.
Yeah, okay, like, we do, and she's beautiful, but it doesn't detract from the fact that, like, we got far enough along to start, like, planning, like, is it going to be a boy or a girl? Like, what are the names? So when we found out, it was really difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And also, it's difficult on a number of fronts. Is firstly, like, the reaction that my ex-wife had. She physically was going through it, and the emotions of it all, and that was really hard for her. Right. And I was going through that, but also felt like I needed to help her through it. Yeah. And I didn't really know how to respond because
we probably felt pretty helpless, I would imagine.
Yeah, like, I didn't know what to say really to comfort her. And there was a lot of times we just sat outside in silence for what seemed like hours because we just were so shocked. And it's still, even thinking about it now, like, really makes me upset. Like, I think about, like, the way we kind of got closure from it. But, it, in a way, like, I then remember a few months after that, maybe not a few months, maybe a year after that, one of my really close mates, he and his wife had a miscarriage. They actually had 2, unfortunately. And we were out and we were talking, and he said, "Hey, me and Annabelle had a miscarriage." Yep. And he was going through the same situation in which he didn't know how to respond because his wife was shutting down. He was someone like me who just loved to talk and, like, get it out, whereas wife didn't, and he didn't really know what to do, and he felt helpless, and then he was getting it wrong. But it was good that we were able to sit down and talk about it, and how to kind of get through that. So I think it's important for people to realize that and normalize it, that it is, well, firstly, you're not alone. It's so common. People
it really
are going to
is.
say wrong things.
Yeah.
And I think if you're on the flip side, right, if somebody's telling you they've had a miscarriage, don't say anything. Just be there for them. Don't say, at least you already have a child.
Just, God, that is just a horrible thing to say. I mean, I'm sure they didn't mean anything by it, but oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just not good. Just sit and listen and just, be there, I think, is something we need to be good at. Being, we don't have to say the right things. Society will say, just say this, this, and this, and the person will be okay. No, just it's okay to sit there in silence with a person. It's totally fine.
Well, and to come back to like the male partner, it doesn't have to be a husband, but the male partner not knowing how to respond. Like, what, I wonder if can you think of anything that like your wife at the time could have done to help you, like to help you know how to help her? Or like, is there advice you could give to the woman in that situation so that they could help the male partner get through it too? Because so much focus is put on the woman, but the male is going through it too, or the man, I don't know why I keep saying male, the man is going through it too, not in the same way, but yeah.
I think you've both got to acknowledge, of course, you're both going to experience it in a different way, and you both are allowed to, you know, maybe one person, you know, is going to initially feel a little bit more overwhelmed and than the other person is, and is going to maybe take up more space than the other person is, and that's okay. But at the same time, there comes a point where you probably do need to pause and look at the other person and consider how they're feeling. So working through it together, and especially if it's, say, the first time it happens and you've got no, you know, say you've got absolutely no experience of it personally or from others, it's going to be tricky. But the only wisdom I guess I could impart is just have time, pause, and be there for each other as much as you can. But then if you're going to take up more space, that's also okay, you know, because it's going to happen, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. And everybody's going to process it differently. Yeah. Gosh, I had another thought on there too, and I lost it. But anyways,
there was one other thing you mentioned too, which I kind of wanted to talk about a bit more. Was well, you know, natural conception, you know, and the pressures of that. I've had a few friends who have been through the same journey. You know, and they've spent a long time trying to, you know, have a baby and have been very stressed and spent a lot of money and stuff like that. And in both situations I can think of is they started to get enormously stressed about it. And, you know, like, I'm not a doctor, but, you know, I'm pretty sure medicine says the more stressed you are, the less likely your body is to probably naturally conceive. And what ended up happening in both scenarios, they'd spent years and years of IVF and stuff, had a baby that way, and then their second baby was just bang. Like,
I know, I've heard that a lot of times. It seems like
so
that happens
I
often.
wondered if you wanted to kind of talk about that a bit more and whether you've seen that as well, or.
Well, I have heard, I mean, with me personally, no, because I got through, once we got through having Emma, I knew probably within the first 2 months, I did not want to go through that ever again. And I just kind of knew we were equipped. And I guess this is the other thing too, or this might get into a different topic, but I feel like too, a lot of times people are pressured to have more than one kid. You know what I mean? And well, pressured to have a kid, period, and pressured to have more than one. And I knew that after we had Emma, we were just not equipped to have more than one kid. And not because we couldn't handle it, but because we're both very driven people, and we're both very, trying to think of the right word. We're both very devoted people. Like, we've both completely devoted ourselves to Emma. So it would be very hard for us to to spread ourselves between two kids. It just would be hard for us, because that's just how we're wired. And I knew that right in the beginning. Plus, I really didn't want to go through all that again. Although maybe it would have been super easy. Uh-oh. Speaking of, here we go. This is perfect. This is little Emma.
I forgot to say.
Sorry, little Emma. I forgot to silence my phone. But that was little Emma.
The wisdom there. She's going to give you some more wisdom for the podcast. Did you set this up? Or?
She knew we were talking about her. She's like, Mom, why are you talking about me again? Because she's 12 and she is really embarrassed to have a parent. You know, she's now to that age where she somehow just came with the stork brought her, and she doesn't have any parents. But anyways, so what was I saying? So anyways, so the point is, don't let society pressure you either into feeling like you have to have a certain number of children to have a family.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think as well, one of the areas we wanted to cover was, society will tell us what a family looks like, and if you don't meet that family structure, like, you should feel funny. Right. And I think that's quite a difficult thing, really, for a lot of people, and make people feel uncomfortable straight away.
Yeah.
Because, I think now more than ever, we realize there's so many different people that fall into different categories. So, for both me and Amanda, we've both got similar situations in that, we both come, we've got children to other, I can't even think of how to express this. Yeah. Well, we're both divorced, and we both have, split care of our children.
Yeah, co-parenting or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
But, so that was a situation that was hard, because I had to figure out, as I imagine you did too, how do you do the whole single parent thing? You don't have someone immediately there to kind of counsel you through the difficult situations, or, if your child's having a meltdown and you don't have someone else there, how do you react to that? Which can be really tricky, especially if you're out in public.
Yeah.
And then, just more broadly, I suppose families could come in so many different sizes, right, or in different forms. But we kind of still have that stereotypical view, I suppose, of like mum and dad and the perfect nuclear family kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I guess it kind of tags on to what you're saying is, like, you hear this all the time, that people stay together for the kids, like a married couple will stay together for the kids, and then they'll almost try to like shame you for separating when you had kids. And in my experience, and I know sometimes, obviously every situation is completely different, and that's why you shouldn't judge anybody for what their decision is and what works for their family. But I just cannot imagine it being good for the kids to live in an environment where they know their parents they probably still love each other in a way. So I don't want to say they don't love each other, but they don't love each other in that way. They don't love each other in a husband and wife way. Kids know that. I mean, kids definitely pick up on all that. So in that situation, I think they're both not necessarily good for the kids. It's not good for the kids for you to divorce, but it's also not good for the kids for you to be in an unloving relationship and maybe bickering at each other all the time and maybe undermining each other all the time. And even a lot of times, I think what happens too is that, the kids get stuck in the middle and they feel like they have to pick sides and all this stuff.
Mm.
So I guess that's something that's always bothered me when I hear people say that, and that when people try to impress that expectation on someone else, that, you should stay together for the kids. And it's like, I feel like in our situation, and again, this isn't going to be everybody, but I think Emma is much better off for us having separated, because I'm a much better person now than I was then, and her dad is a much better person now. Unfortunately, we happen to bring the worst out. We're both good people, but we happen to bring the worst out in each other, and we were both kind of dimming each other's light or something, if that's like a cheesy way of saying it. And now we're both doing really good, and we wouldn't have gotten there so she has that now where she can see that, and we wouldn't have gotten there if we would have stayed together.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not that cut and dry.
I think you're right. Similar situation here. I feel it's so much better for Rose. Mm-hmm. And initially it was a bit of a difficult situation because she was so young. It would be like, why are we not staying with mum? And occasionally she'll ask those questions like, why are you and mum not together anymore?
Yeah.
And I'll have to kind of talk through that. But like, I think both of us are like way better off and feeling a lot more comfortable in ourselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, like initially it's going to be a struggle and it'll feel like it's better to stay together. And you've also got that societal pressure on you, but you want to break that because it will, in the long run, make things so much better.
Right.
Like I don't think I would have been like on the journey I've been in learning how to be a dad. Like I feel like a good dad because I've had to like work through a lot of difficulties and figure things out on my own.
Right.
And I think that's kind of helped me and Rose bond a lot more. So I think,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah, it's just that real poisonous societal belief, you know,
Yeah.
stay together for the kids. And it's like, well, I don't think that's a good idea.
Right.
Like,
well, and I will add one thing to that, just to couch it a little bit, because Emma was very young too when Matt and I separated. I've never said his name, I don't think, but his name's Matt. He wouldn't mind. He would definitely not mind me using his name. So, when we separated, she had just turned 2. I mean, it was within like a month of her second birthday, and she doesn't remember us ever being together. So, so I guess it's easy for me to say, don't say together for the kids, but I acknowledge the fact that it would be much harder if the kids were older and they actually knew what was going on. I do understand that that's a much harder decision to make at that time.
Good point. Yeah.
And then, but yeah, and it's just so hard because you see so many people too that do pit the kids against the other parent and all that, and that's just so sad to me. Luckily, we have never had that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it successful, because because I still call us a family. Like I call Matt and his partner, they're part of my family. We're all a family. And so the point I was trying to make there, now we're getting off track, but is in the beginning, we were obviously not getting along because we were separating and there's all kinds of stuff going on. However, when it came to Emma, we always agreed, or we were always respectful to each other when it came to Emma and making decisions for her and what was best for her. And so if you just focus on the kids and not focus on your own ego, I guess, because it is easy to focus on your ego when you're going through that situation. I think that's what gets you through it, so that you can get to the point where the separation is better for the kids.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the key, though, because it's not going to be better for the kids if you're not putting them first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and on the flip side, I mean, separations and stuff can be hard. You know, you hear some horror stories of what parents go through. And I know of, a mate that I used to work with who, he lost a court case with his ex-wife and she took his firstborn to another state.
Gosh,
and he had no control of that, and he was heartbroken, because he loved his kids. And it was a situation where his ex-partner used a lot of things, like would collect all this information, which out of context might look damning, and basically use that as a means to push him out of his daughter's life. And that's really, really tough. So, I think, like yourself, I feel really blessed that I'm in an amicable situation.
Right.
I also really do feel for anyone out there who is not in that situation, and it must be.
And I've experienced both, because my husband Dan, so not to be confused with my ex-husband Matt, my husband Dan, him, and I won't give details because that's not my business to give, but I will say that him and his ex-wife do not get along at all. And he had to fight for custody of his kids. He fought to have more than 50-50 custody. And there are a lot of reasons he did that. But point is, it is really sad to me that, I mean, it's just the way it is. But men do kind of get screwed over when it comes to custody issues. he
Yeah.
ended up having to go to court. He spent a ton of money. I think he said he ended up spending like $15,000 when it was pretty dang obvious that he should have had more custody of the kids than she should have.
Yeah.
And anyways, and if it was flipped the other way around, a woman wouldn't have to go through that effort to prove herself the way that he had to, all the hoops he had to jump through to prove himself.
And I think that's such a good point too. And we know in so many other instances, you know, men have always probably got it like in favor of them.
Yeah.
We won't even go there. That'll be another episode.
Well, yeah.
But, you know,
no, I know. It's kind of the reverse. I know. I'll have all the feminists after me, like, what are you talking about? Men have everything
no,
else.
but I totally agree. I think my experience, you know, dealing, for example, with the child support agency here,
Yeah.
is I almost don't like contacting them because I feel like, you know, that I'm just a piece of crap. Like,
Okay.
just things that some of the people I've spoken to have said make me feel like I'm just this deadbeat dad who doesn't want to pay any like child support or anything.
Right.
And it's like, no, I want to pay what I need to pay. I'll go above that, you know, and I'd be happy to, you know, like at the end of the day, the child comes first. Like whatever the child needs,
Right.
you need to consider that. But like, I just find that child support, you know, here is just very like, if you're a man, it's like, oh, you're doing the dodgy, aren't you? You're dodgy. You don't want to pay.
Yeah,
and there will
be
people out there. I know there will be, but you know, like it just sucks that still there's this big structure that's just so like condemning, I think, to men. So I think that needs to be looked at. I think there needs to be in every system there needs to be equality, and there shouldn't be this assumed kind of belief that all men are evil and trying to like stooge their respective partners out of money.
No,
Which I
exactly. Unfortunately, I know there's that stereotype still out there, but yeah, and I guess some of it I think just takes time to change, and I don't know how we got on this bandwagon, but that's cool. We'll take it. But some of it just takes time to change because it's like the mindset is still in the days when primarily the woman stayed home with the kids and the man worked. Well, it's not like that anymore. And I mean, yeah, obviously there are cases like that, but now there's a lot of times that the husband or the man stays home or they're both working. And it's like, but the legal system hasn't caught up to that and acknowledged that the father has just as much a role in the child's life. And even more important, I don't know, of course I'm a female, so I only know the female perspective really, but I'm just thinking of how important a father's role is in a daughter's life and how much that affects how she treats herself or allows herself to be treated later. And so just thinking of that, you know, it's like you just keep this cycle going when you're not letting the father have that relationship that he needs to have with both kids, but definitely with the girl or the daughter. Gosh, it's just going to perpetuate a cycle where the daughter is going to end up with someone and end up like some bad person end up getting divorced. And then, you know, it's just the cycle just keeps continuing because we can't figure out.
Break the cycle.
Yeah. So we got to let the dads in a little bit.
Yeah. Totally agree. And to our other point, I suppose it's a good tie into, you know, societal's expectation of how a mother or a father should be.
Yeah.
So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts around, you know, when you first had Emma, you know, and if you had the awareness of like what Emma's dad was going through as well in those early stages, because I know like I felt very lost in the beginning.
Okay.
And I think that's another kind of area that men do feel kind of useless in the beginning because we don't have that physical connection, especially I suppose if you're breastfeeding. That's obviously, you know, I hear obviously something that really connects you to your child.
Well, yeah. And you're just not given the time to even feed your own child. for the man.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it just like it makes it difficult in the beginning. You're just trying to get that connection and figure it out what your
Yep.
role is. And I think it can make you feel a little uncomfortable. But again, that same friend who I was able to speak openly about, miscarriage with, we had the same discussion where he's like, "Did you feel useless in the first 3 months?" I was like, "Yeah, totally."
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, cool. That makes me feel better.
I never really thought about it too much. Well, I guess us women don't really think about that. But there is so much emphasis put on the mom. Like we get showers thrown for us. And I know there's a lot more couple showers now than there used to be and that kind of thing. It's coming around, it's changing, but there still is a lot more emphasis put on the mom. And we had an unusual situation. So I was working, well, I guess he still does. So Matt has always worked either second or third shift. He's always worked at night, pretty much always. And he was working that shift when Emma was born. And so the way we worked it is like he was with her during the day while I was at work.
Yep.
And then I was with her at night. And so we kind of worked it out that way. So he was definitely always very involved just because of the way that worked itself out. But I do remember in the hospital, like he wanted to know, like he was asking the nurse all these questions and he wanted to make sure he knew how to do everything. And it's just funny because he responded, not funny, but I mean, cute funny, because he wanted to make sure he was so prepared, when he got home that he was going to be able to handle this. Whereas I'm like, I was not even, I'm asking no questions because we just kind of have this built-in, us women just kind of have this built-in intuition that we know what to do with our baby. And so anyways, that was really cute. But yeah, so I'm sure he did feel that way, but I almost had the opposite where I didn't really bond with Emma very much, probably for the first year. Like the first time we went away for a week or close to a week and left Emma with our parents. Like they traded off half and half the week. And we come home after being gone. And who does Emma go straight for? Matt. She didn't care that I was there. She didn't even look at me. She just went straight to Matt. So we might, so it's weird because we kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, almost had somewhat opposite as far as the bonding goes. But then it came, and I think maybe that's a good point too, is like, don't settle for thinking that because you don't bond with your baby right away, that you're not going to. Because it will come in time, assuming that you want it to, because now we're super bonded, and we really started bonding probably, I don't know, probably when she was like 1.5 or so. When she could actually like move around more and talk more is when we started bonding, because I'm not much of a baby person per se. And so I could bond with her a lot better once I could communicate with her.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's another assumption that people make, is that like every woman is a baby person. And I'm like, no, I'm really not. Give them to me after they're a year old and I'm good.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking, when you're talking about the inbuilt intuition. I think, if you are having a baby and as a woman you don't have that intuition, or you're feeling like disconnected, that's okay. And I think a big one too would be breastfeeding. Like if you can't breastfeed straight away, that's also okay, because there's so many different elements that could impact it. Like Rose, for example, she had jaundice.
Oh, okay.
We basically, there wasn't that instant connection because she had to be rushed off to kind of, go through the process of looking after her when she got jaundice. And it meant that there wasn't that time to connect straight away. So it took a bit of time for her to latch.
That makes sense.
But, I noticed all of the nurses, well, not all of them, that's rude to say, but a few of the nurses were very like, come on, you need to breastfeed like right now. Like, why aren't you breastfeeding? Come on, what are you doing? And the more that happened, the more stressed.
Well, you go back to that whole stress thing. Yeah.
And I started to get angry. I started to be like, go away. Like, I'm sorry, it's not working out. And that's fine. Just leave it. Because it's like just unnecessary shame. It's like, all right, well, maybe 90% of the mums or something that have come through this ward have been able to latch straight away. That's fantastic, but just leave the mums alone who can't.
Who can't do it.
Yeah, it's because otherwise
that would be so, and plus just your emotions are all over the place anyway, and yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Now this is an odd question. I don't know how we got talking about breastfeeding, but I am curious because breastfeeding is another thing that is pushed on us so much here in the United States, and I just wonder is that something that's really stressed in Australia?
Yeah.
I mean, like they have billboards for it and everything, and you're just like, what is the point? I just don't. Okay, because I did not breastfeed, and I knew I wasn't going to breastfeed. And as I've already said, I'm not really a baby person, and I can't really, like, I know what my limits are, and I knew that would be too much for me. Like, it's just too much of an emotional commitment and a time commitment, which might sound horrible, but that's just how it is. Like, I know my limits, and so I wasn't going to breastfeed. And you are kind of shamed a little bit when you make that decision. And it's like, what is your problem? Why do you care what I want to do with my child?
Yeah.
And like, why is there so much pressure put on women to do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, like the whole formula thing. I mean, I have to say, like, we would kind of move between the two. And it was, it made me actually feel useful being able to make the, I can still remember, like, sterilizing the bottles and then like getting the milk at the right temperature, and actually it made me like instantly feel like, yes, I'm doing something productive. So again, if you come together and decide you want to formula feed, that's totally fine as well. But yeah, there is this big pressure, I think, which is like, I don't know, what's that quote they use, breast is best. Do you have that over?
They say that here too. Yes.
And it's like, I don't know, like, I don't think that's a good way of saying it. Like,
I know, and
and I know there'll be medical, maybe like, there's research that says that it is, and okay, if that's the case, cool. But at the same token, we shouldn't shame people. There was actually a funny kind of news kind of piece that blew up over here. There was a celebrity chef by the name of Pete Evans. Who
that sounds familiar?
Yeah, probably he came out, and I probably got this wrong, but like, essentially talked about like making a bone broth as almost like a substitute for breast milk, which I think he had to kind of jump on the defensive wagon and say it was out of context. I wasn't saying it's a complete substitute, but like that caused a humongous, massive uproar. Yeah, I can imagine. And that's the thing. It just shows that anything to do with that topic is very taboo.
Right. It's crazy to me because, I mean, everybody has their own experience, but you know what? Little Emma is perfectly healthy, and she's always been perfectly healthy. So whatever. But yeah, it is an odd thing, but I just think that, like you said, to think of it from the dad's perspective too, that gives the dad a little more time. Yeah. With the kid. Yeah. Yeah. Because I know we forget about the dads a lot, as I've already said.
How are we going through time as well? I find it so hard.
Yeah, we should start wrapping up. So have we covered all of our so we were going to talk about don't settle for society's expectation that you should have children by a certain age, or even that you should have children at all. And we talked about that. And then we were going to talk about don't settle for societal expectations of what a mother or father should look like, and we did talk about that a bit. And don't settle for what society says a family should look like. And we did talk about that a little bit. Because I mentioned my family situation. Well, but I haven't talked. The one thing I guess I would mention quickly was we haven't talked about stepchildren, and a lot of people also are in a situation where they have stepchildren, and that can be very difficult. And there's a lot of expectations and, around that. So since I am someone who has experience with that, it is very difficult we were super lucky. Like all of our kids loved each other the minute they saw each other. Like literally the minute they saw each other, they ran and gave each other a hug. They all loved each other. We all got along great. we never had any issues like that. And all of our kids were pretty young. So Big Emma, the oldest, would have been 8 when we met. So they were all pretty young. And so that probably made it easier. But so we had the best circumstance. And even in that, it is very hard to get over the expectation. Like for a long time, I felt like I should feel the same way about Big Emma and Spencer that I feel about Little Emma. And it took me a long time. And we do our very best to treat them all the same. Like they have the same rules and, you know, all that kind of stuff. We don't try to favor any over the other. However, it took me a long time to realize that I'm never going to feel the same way about them that I do Little Emma, and that's okay. First of all, they already have a mom, so they don't need me to be their mom. I do feel a motherly role in a lot of ways, and I'm always there for them when they need me and all that, but it's just never going to be the same. And I feel like a lot of people feel like try to force themselves to feel a certain way that they're just not going to feel. Because I don't know that it's possible to ever feel the same way about someone that you've actually had inside your body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, It's kind of ridiculous to think that you could feel the exact same way about someone else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That was the only thing I think that we haven't really touched on that I'd like to just offer to people that are maybe going through that situation or maybe dealing with some guilt over not feeling the same way or not bonding with their stepchildren, because that can take a while. And yeah, because you don't have that blood connection, all that history together. So it can take a while to bond. So
I think, yeah, that's a really important one. The other one, and it's not one that I could really talk a lot about, don't have a lot of experience with, but same-sex parents.
Yeah.
Or parents that would fall, like transgender parents or things like that. Like, I don't have enough experience to probably talk about it, but again, like I know society very much has that typical mum and dad nuclear family perspective still, and I think it's being broken, and there's more popular media coming out, kind of breaking it, which is great.
Yeah.
But again, I think each scenario is different, and we all just need to not put pressure on it and just say, oh, okay, that's your situation, cool. That's whatever works for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it brings me back to what Tammy was saying last week about that what she does is nurture. That's what she does. Nurture group or something. But to nurture the children, to know how to handle their emotions and how to handle their emotions in the world. And that just made me think of that because if you paint this rosy picture for these kids, or like this perfect picture of what a family's supposed to look like, and then those kids get into the real world and not every family looks like that. And then all of a sudden they're going to feel less than for some reason, or they're going to feel like something's wrong with them.
Yes.
So it's like, let's just support the kids, let them know they're loved. And if they have a loving family, just let them be.
I agree. Yeah. Just get rid of any expectations around what it looks like, because it'll create stigma, as you say. Yes. Kids will go out there expecting it to look a certain way.
And we think we're trying to protect the kids or something, but we're actually doing them more harm than good by doing.
Yeah. Because if they see anything that doesn't, like say they've got some little friends at school that their situation's not the same as theirs, they might, discriminate against them or be mean to them. For sure. And vice versa, if they feel like theirs isn't like everyone else at school, they might feel funny and beat themselves up about it. So yeah, we've got to realize the impact we're having to our children. It's a big one.
Exactly. Yep. We have a lot of responsibilities as adults. Darn it.
We do.
And we wanted to grow up so bad, didn't we?
Here we are today. God damn it. It's so hard.
No, we just wanted to grow up, and now we don't want to be here anymore. Not here. I mean, adults. We don't want to be adults anymore.
We don't want to be adults. Let us be children, please.
All right. So we're going to throw out our 3 non-optional questions. I think we're to that point. Would you?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. So we have 3 non-optional questions that we typically throw out to our guests, but when we don't have a guest, we throw them out to the audience. So the first question is, what expectation of parenthood do you need to let go of? Second question is, here we go. This is going to be the funny one. Do you have any familial?
Yeah.
Not bad. Do you have any familial guilt you need to let go of? We didn't want to say parental guilt, and I didn't know if I could say familial, but I think I got it. Okay.
Tough word. Familial. Yeah.
All right. And the third question is, what's something you learned from a kid today? It doesn't have to be your kid if you don't have kids, but what's something that you learned from a kid? So with that, we'll wrap things up and remind you again to check. If you're watching this, you're probably watching us on YouTube, but check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, and leave us some comments would help too, because that'll help us get out to more people. We are on Spotify, as Adam mentioned, but we're also on Podbean and Amazon Music. We're on Coffee, which is where you could be so kind as to give us as little as $1 to help us grow the show and get some new equipment and all that good stuff. Oh, and you can find us on LinkedIn. You can email us at cheerstonotsettling@gmail.com. Yeah. I lost it there for a second. So there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of us, and all links to all that will be in the description of this video, so you can check that out. And until next time, cheers to not settling. Bye. Bye.